I know, careful. Okay, we on? Okay, we're on now. Good afternoon and welcome to the Trade, Travel, and Tourism Committee. I'm Chairman Buscaino. I'm joined by my colleagues, Mr. Kokorian and Mr. Bonin. Today is Tuesday, December 5th. Welcome to the Board of Public Works hearing room. We moved downstairs because we expected a number of speakers on item number 1, which we'll soon get to. But before we do so, colleagues, if we can take item number 2 on consent. We're good? Okay, without objection. What's that? Yes, Mr. Bonin.
I think I saw the airport in the room here. The port's doing a better job on solar than the airport, so step it up.
All right, we have a challenge then. So with that, without objection, we'll approve item number 2. So with that, then do we have a general public comment? No, we will then close general public comment. And with that, if you are here, let's take up item number 1 now.
Good afternoon, John White, City Clerk. Item 1, Harbor Department to report relative to the Board of Harbor Commissioners' approval of the Port of Los Angeles' Clean Air Action Plan update, the policy blueprint for achieving a goal of zero emissions by 2035. On November 21st, 2017, the Council adopted motion Buscaino-Bonin pursuant to Charter Section 245, asserting jurisdiction over the Board of Harbor Commissioners' action taken November 2nd, 2017.
Very good. I felt that it was important for us to weigh in on this framework policy on improving the air quality in and around our port complex, both in San Pedro and the Port of Los Angeles, Port of Long Beach. And oftentimes, publicly, I mentioned the work that the port has done in reducing emissions over the course of the last 15 years, in doing so in a voluntary effort. And I share the story of my brother-in-law, Donnie, who works the docks, Paul, 15 years, almost 20 years on the docks. He remembers 15 years ago coming home after a shift working the docks with soot on him, and today he comes home without that soot. So we do know that amazing work has been done thanks to the leadership of the Port of Los Angeles. I do welcome those who want to speak on item number 1. And if you do have a card, if you do want to speak on this item, please be sure to fill out a card and get it over to our clerk. With us today, we will hear from the Executive Director of the Port of Los Angeles, Gene Siroka, and Chris Cannon, but I do want to recognize Port Commissioner Dave Arian, who's here. Dave, any other colleagues are here? So, very good. Would you like to say a few words before we turn over to Mr. Siroka? So help me welcome Port Commissioner Dave Arian.
Yeah, you know, this issue has evolved from Mayor Hahn to Antonio Villaraigosa, now our President Mayor. I had the fortunate opportunity to be part of this program from the beginning, and we made a lot of progress. We still got a long way to go. Grew up in the harbor area. You know, I can remember as a kid, you had days when you couldn't come out and play, and things have changed. I can remember fishing in the harbor, and you couldn't get any fish 25 years ago because they were all dead. That's not true anymore. So there's major changes that have taken place, but this is built up over a long period of time, and it doesn't change overnight. And, you know, I'm proud to be part of not only the workforce down there for 44 years, but see the improvements that are being made today. I also appreciate the environmental movement, because without them, you just don't push major institutions to make any kind of significant change. They don't do it on their own. That's not what happens in this country. But we're fortunate not only to have the environmentalists, but other groupings that have, in early days, made the port push forward. And I think today, you know, I'm sure we'll hear from them. I'm glad they're here, because I've always said things don't change unless you show up and make your voice heard. So I appreciate, finally, our new director who's been here 3.5 years. And Gina's done a wonderful job, not only in terms of moving the port from 8 million containers to probably this year, probably 9.4 million containers. Incredible advancements being made, and at the same time lowering the emissions. You'll hear all that from them, but I appreciate the hearing. I appreciate you calling the hearing, Joe. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. So with that, help me welcome Gene Siroka, the Executive Director of the Port of Los Angeles, who will be followed by Chris Cannon, and those in the audience, we will, after the presentation, we'll turn to the speaker cards, and then for the committee to ask some questions and make some comments. Mr. Siroka, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair and committeemen. Also thank the members of the public, distinguished guests, Harbor Department staff, and from the Port of Long Beach, Heather Tromley, who co-authored along with Chris Cannon this 2017 Clean Air Action Plan. It's been some 2.5 years since I first publicly called for an update to the Clean Air Action Plan in September of 2015. At the time, we had met or nearly met all of the emissions reductions goals in the harbor enclave some 9 years ahead of schedule. And I felt it was time to move forward to take advantage of newer technology, newer mindsets, and the great collaborative effect that we had developed in our business. From there, more than 2 years of extensive outreach consisting of more than 70 public meetings with over 30 stakeholder groups and in excess of 400 comment letters that were received by the harbor departments from customers, business groups, regulatory agencies, neighborhood and community organizations, environmental groups, and technology providers. I am confident that what you have seen here and will see today will drive further change and enable greater reductions in harmful air emissions while improving health risk. To all of those who have participated to shape the cap as you see it before you, thank you. The fact that we are moving forward to finish the job of making San Pedro Bay Ports Complex the world's most environmentally healthy and economically dynamic gateway is nothing short of remarkable. And that was proven by the November 2nd unanimous votes from the harbor commissions of both the Port of Long Beach and Los Angeles on the program that is in front of you. Our proposed 2017 cap is designed to guide the San Pedro Bay ports and will continue to work with our valued and various cap stakeholders on a continuous basis to further reduce emissions from port-related sources for the next decade and beyond. In large part, because of the many years of work by so many here today and others beyond these walls, we are the cleanest port in the United States and arguably the world. Our commitment and dedication to cleaner operations continues. Once we received direction from the boards on that day, November 2nd, we began to develop the details of the CAP programs. We look forward to the continued work that we will take place with all stakeholders to make that happen. I also want to emphasize 2 points. Our CAP process has been and remains in consultation with all stakeholders. And secondly, we will continue our collaborative partnership with the South Coast Air Quality Management District and the California Air Resources Board because we believe that the CAP provides the best way with available state funds to advance the development and deployment of clean technologies, including trucks and cargo handling equipment like the world has never seen before. We hope through our ongoing cooperation and partnership, state funding can be put to good use as soon as next year and will incent near zero and zero emissions equipment. While we're proud of the role that the ports have played to date in cleaning the air, the 2017 CAP update is an acknowledgement that our work is far from complete. In a few minutes, Chris Cannon will describe in more detail the theories of the CAP policy and our postulates moving forward, including the new strategies to be employed and the goals we are striving toward. The document also makes clear that achieving our goals depends not only on collaborating more closely than ever before with all of our partners, but also playing a market maker role in demonstrating that there are emerging markets here and elsewhere for next-generation zero-emissions port technology. And among our most important partners and ardent supporters of the 2017 CAP are the mayors of Long Beach and Los Angeles. Mayor Richard Garcia and Mayor Robert Garcia and Mayor Eric Garcetti have spotlighted the urgency of taking our initiatives to the next level in their joint declaration statement this past summer. Moreover, they outlined their strategies for accelerating the transition to zero emissions technology in ways that also improve supply chain efficiencies, grow jobs, and increase the competitiveness of our ports. These strategies, which all build on existing clean air programs, are integrated into the 2017 CAP update, and they include the following: expanding the Technology Advancement Program for a continuation of demonstration and pilot projects that will bring commercial availability to these emerging concepts; accelerating at-birth emissions reductions. The 2017 CAP also calls for updating and deploying more alternative systems for capturing vessel emissions from ships unable to plug into shore power, with a goal of capturing 100% of all ship emissions at berth by the year 2030. Expanding our zero emissions truck pilot drayage program. We are also increasing the number of zero emissions trucks in our pilot programs for large scale testing, and again to prove that we will be a market to be shared. Forming a CAP implementation stakeholder advisory group. This group will be comprised of key private and public sector experts, along with stakeholders, to review staff work and advise us as we develop and implement new CAP strategies. Advocating for funding. We will continue to focus our efforts to secure public and private partners in pursuit of financial support needed for the new equipment and infrastructure that will be necessary to achieve our goals. Launching a Green Ports Collaborative. We will partner with other ports to demonstrate zero emissions vehicles and equipment in more markets. By growing demand for production, we can reduce the cost of each unit and help the original equipment manufacturers and their tiered suppliers in their product development efforts to get those machines to market. In closing, I would again like to thank all the stakeholders that participated in the construction of the CAP 2017 update, and everyone who helped shape this policy as we see it today. I also want to thank the Port of Long Beach and the Port of Los Angeles Harbor Commissioners for their steadfast support of the CAP. And lastly, thanks to our staff, who I have thanked over time for all the diligence and spent time that has gone into this program so far. That concludes my remarks for this afternoon.
Thank you, Mr. Siroka. I'd like to call up now Chris Cannon for his presentation on the final Clean Air Action Plan update. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Member, and good afternoon, other Council members. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Chris Cannon. I'm the Director of Environmental Management at the Port of Los Angeles. You have in front of you, and also on the screen, a full copy of the presentation that we gave at the Joint Boards of Harbor Commissions a few weeks ago in November. It was a joint presentation with the Port of Long Beach, and as Jean mentioned, Heather Tomley is here in the audience to support us today, but is not prepared to make any remarks. Only I will speak. Also, in the interest of time, I will not go through the entire presentation, but will instead only focus on 7 or 8 slides, and then we would be happy to answer any questions that you may have. But to begin, we'd like to start with just a little bit of context. When it was enacted by our two boards in 2006, our Clean Air Action Plan was a first of its kind. Its combination of aggressive emission reduction goals for key source categories, a technology advancement program to continue to look for new ways to reduce emissions, and a detailed emissions inventory protocol to track progress had never been tried before on such a large scale in any port complex in the world. In 12 years, our industry partners have made significant investments in cleaner equipment, including a brand new drayage fleet and new or repowered terminal operating equipment. They have pioneered the use of shoreside electric power before it was done anywhere else in the world. They have led the way with cleaner fuels for vessels, and they have slowed down and therefore further helped to reduce emissions on their approach to San Pedro Bay, largely through our voluntary participation in our vessel speed reduction program. These are just a few examples of many CAP activities that have occurred in the last decade, and we're very, very proud of the results. As you can see, and these are combined results for the two ports, diesel particulate matter emissions are down 87%, NOx down 56, SOx down 97, and greenhouse gas is down by 18%. And this has all occurred while cargo volumes through this complex have increased by 10%. These reductions are on pace or in excess of the goals we've laid out for ourselves for in our 2010 update for the CAP for 2023, as you can see, and we're already exceeding these levels on 2 of our 3 tracking standards. But we cannot rest on our laurels. Our ongoing challenge will be to continue to maintain these reductions as growth continues. To do this, emissions per unit of cargo will actually have to decline over time just to keep pace with our current emissions reductions. We have achieved a lot, but going forward, we're going to have to work much harder. Our challenge then for the 2017 CAP update is to find a way to build on these successes. As Gene mentioned, we believe we are the cleanest port complex in the world, and our environmental programs now serve as models for other ports. But as our colleagues before us realized when they first envisioned a Clean Air Action Plan more than a decade ago, the only way the ports can continue to grow is if they grow green. And as we have seen over the past few years, growth and green are not mutually incompatible ideas. Make no mistake, we have to be environmental stewards. We have to work with our industry partners to find ways to continue to cut emissions and associated health risks from port-related sources. We have to reduce air quality impacts to local communities, especially environmental justice communities, as air quality in Southern California remains among the worst in the nation. But we have to do this without sacrificing jobs and economic vitality for our industry partners and those in the area that rely on these ports for their livelihoods and their families. So I'd like to just provide a little bit of an overview, and I'm going to jump ahead now to the ocean-going vessels slide. First, for ocean-going vessels, and these are just the overview. I'm going to give you a high-level overview of what our programs were. As I said, we can talk about them in detail with questions if you'd like. For ocean-going vessels, our largest source of emissions, we're proposing a suite of strategies to reduce emissions. To address at-berth emissions, we propose to participate in the state's effort to achieve up to 100% compliance with at-berth regulation in 2030. And with the help of we will help this by demonstrating new at-berth emission reduction technologies. We're actually going out with our request for proposals very soon to do that. Accelerating the availability and utilization of technologies through a concerted strategy to advocate for and secure state and federal funds, and accelerating use requirements through leases where possible. To address transiting emissions, we propose to build upon our successful vessel speed reduction programs to maximize participation for all vessels transiting within 40 nautical miles of Port Furman. And with the goal of increasing calls for the cleanest engine, we will study the possibility of implementing a variable rate on ships according to engine tier level to encourage calls by the cleanest ships, and discouraging the older ships. Moving to trucks. Trucks are the largest port-related source of greenhouse gas emissions and the second largest source for NOx emissions. We have heard loud and clear the stakeholder comments about not wanting to wait 17 years for cleaning the air. We agree. And with our proposed strategy, our goal is to transition the fleet into cleaner near-zero emission trucks in the near term, followed by the ultimate transition to zero emissions by 2035. As soon as the California Air Resources Board announces their proposed near-zero engine manufacturer standard in 2019, we will follow their lead as the state's air regulator and institute a variable rate for trucks that are not near zero or zero emissions starting as early as 2020. This will be coupled with an efficiency strategy to implement a port reservation system for marine terminals by the end of 2020 that will integrate existing terminal operating systems and help to increase overall efficiency for cargo movement at the port complex. And I want to say something about actions we can take to get clean truck operations sooner than 2020. We will work closely with state and local air regulators to support grant programs for early adopters that will buy near-zero trucks as soon as they are available, hopefully as soon as mid-2018. And though not listed here, we are proud to say we will work with the Air Resources Board to implement a pilot smog check program for drayage trucks. And I want to tell you, this is a good example of how our collaborative programs work. This smog check idea actually comes with the support of the trucking community. They are the ones that want to make sure that it is demonstrated to everyone that their trucks are clean and they operate in a manner that meets the standards that have been set. This is a first of its kind anywhere in the United States, and we're proud to say that it begins here. And finally, as Gene mentioned, we are committed to a 100-truck zero-emission drayage truck demonstration program, which we hope to begin very soon. We will begin working with original equipment manufacturers as soon as next year to make that happen. Terminal equipment. For terminal equipment, our goal is to transition the fleet to zero emissions by 2030. Consistent with this, we will also participate in the state's rulemaking effort to achieve up to 100% zero emissions terminal equipment by that time. But we have heard stakeholder concerns about the availability of technology today to begin this zero emission transition and the worries about stranded assets in the process. So we will begin a program that will work with terminal procurement planners to make sure that anytime they purchase new equipment, starting in 2019, it must be zero emissions if that kind of equipment is feasible to use at a terminal. And if zero emissions is not feasible, we will work with the terminals to find the cleanest available near zero or other type of equipment for their operations. We will also work with them to identify purchasing strategies that will minimize the potential for stranded assets when cleaner zero emissions equipment eventually becomes available. Finally, we will work with terminal operators to establish a terminal equipment idling reduction program, and we will continue to work with the regulatory agencies, technology developers, and operators to establish charging standards for equipment. So I'd like to jump ahead to additional key comments and clarifications, again, in the interest of time. These are things that we really heard a lot of comments from amongst the stakeholders. We certainly were asked that in addition, in our efforts to try and clean the air, that we make sure we don't keep the ports from being competitive. And so we're going to work with industry to assure that they remain competitive. They've asked us to study this, and we will do that. We've heard loud and clear about truck driver conditions and financing, and we're very, very concerned about the concerns or the issues that have been raised by the truck drivers. We will look for opportunities to protect the drivers in grant programs and other types of programs wherever we can. Finally, our implementation milestones. A lot of the agencies have asked us to put milestones in our program. We have goals that have been set in some of in various aspects of our program. We'll work with the agencies to try to make sure that those goals can be met. And through transparency and reporting, as Gene mentioned, we're going to have a series of meetings with stakeholders to assure that this can be done. Our next steps are, we're at a starting point now. We're really not at the end, but just beginning. We're going to establish a CAP implementation advisory work group, which we hope will begin meeting as early as February of next year. We'll begin technology demonstrations. As I said, we're working on a 100-truck zero-emission demonstration program. We'll begin feasibility assessments on the availability of zero-emission technology starting next year. Our clean truck program will begin with the Smog program and various other programs for registering trucks next year. The port reservation system is underway, or the beginnings of that kind of a system is underway, and we hope within the next year or two we can get something together. And finally, the terminal equipment procurement process that I mentioned will begin working with the terminals. I don't have to say anything about this slide except for just the first two words, funding advocacy. We will need your help to help us get money. These programs have been estimated to be at least $14 billion, and the PMSA thinks it's at least double that. And so in order to accomplish our objectives, we're going to need money and government funding, and and we hope that you could help us in helping to accomplish that. The EPA, the Air Resources Board, the California Energy Commission, and the South Coast Air Quality Management District are all agencies whose funding we'll need help with, but support from you on that is going to be critical. I'll end there and be happy to take any comments or questions you have.
Thank you, Chris. We'll now turn to our speakers who are here, and we'll turn it over to the committee for some questions. So with that, if you hear your name, please come forward. You'll each be given 2 minutes to speak on the item before us. I'll be calling you in three. So Sarah Patterson, representing Assembly Member O'Donnell's office, Joe Liu, and Sarah Reese. Please come forward. Two, yes.
Thank you, Chair Buscaino, council members, and committee staff. My name is Sarah Patterson, and I'm here today on behalf of Assembly Member O'Donnell, who represents both the Port of LA and the Port of Long Beach in California's 70th Assembly District. Assembly Member O'Donnell worked hard to ensure hundreds of millions of dollars for clean freight upgrades, which includes $180 million of cap-and-trade dollars specifically dedicated to port equipment. As we all know, the ports are the single largest source of pollution in the Southern California basin, but they are also the leaders in the deployment of clean technology. The Assembly member urges you to get the dollars out the door quickly as possible and begin investing in clean air projects consistent with state environmental goals. We especially need to expend cap-and-trade dollars in order to demonstrate the state's investment is being well utilized and, more importantly, to advocate for the renewal of these funds next year. The continuous allocation of these dollars is essential if we hope to meet the goals set forth in the Clean Air Action Plan. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Happy to see my colleague on the governing board of the HMD here joining us, Joe Liu.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thanks for your presence.
One of the things I wanted to talk about, and members, was the fact that we did receive $107.5 million on Friday at South Coast AQMD, and much of that can be spent and should be spent at the ports. There's more money to come from the VW settlement, other money that was appropriated by the legislature, almost $1 billion in transportation funding coming from the legislature that's going to be spent for a variety of things, but a lot of it's going to be targeted toward ports and freight, cleaning up this system. So we do have a great opportunity. I think it's an issue that you should, as this committee, address. In addition, you really need to talk about what's going to be done in the near term. It is linked to this funding. The funding that we're getting, most of it has to be either spent or encumbered by June of 2019. So we have to get this out the door very quickly, and we have to make it work. And that also brings in this issue of near-term emission reductions. And, Council Member, as you well know, we have to do that quickly in order to reach attainment of our federal air quality standards. Right. I would also urge you to think about delinking the establishment of the rate from any action by the California Air Resources Board. You might want to know that the Los Angeles World Airports adopted a policy recently that did that and basically said that if you have an older vehicle, 11 years or older, medium or heavy duty, you're not going to be able to use it at the airport. So I don't understand why you have to have that link to the Air Resources Board, and it could lead to problems in terms of implementation. But thank you for taking this issue up, and we encourage you to discuss these important issues.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Sarah Reese. I'm the Assistant Deputy Executive Officer for the South Coast Air Quality Management District. We really appreciate the hard work that the two port staffs have put into crafting this plan and their openness in working with South Coast Air Quality Management District staff and others during its development. We see this plan as an important first step in meeting our regional and local air needs, but much hard work remains and it must begin immediately. As you know, the Clean Air Act mandates that we reduce nitrogen oxide by 45% by 2023 to meet regional clean air standards, and the ports are our largest source of NOx in the air basin. In addition, our residents living in Wilmington, Long Beach, and other neighboring communities bear the brunt of breathing this pollution every minute of each day and cannot wait years for clean air. The proposed cap is a great first step, but district staff believe that the ports can and should do more to meet their fair share of emission reductions. In testimony that we submitted to the boards of harbor commissioners, we have shared more detailed actions and goals that the ports must take to meet this fair share responsibility. For instance, establish a target of at least 70% near zero and 500 zero-emission drayage trucks by 2023, with a requirement that pre-2010 trucks apply for available funding. accelerate the Clean Ships program with rate structures that strongly incentivize cleaner vessels and discourage older vessels beginning in 2018. Accelerate the replacement of cargo handling equipment with the cleanest feasible technologies by 2023. Target 100% Tier 4 switcher locomotives in 2023 and maximize Tier 4 long-haul locomotives routing to the ports. We believe that these and other suggested targets and actions are reasonable and achievable, with many contingent upon incentive funding and commercial availability. We are committed to partner with the ports and all stakeholders to implement, supplement, and accelerate the measures in the CAP. We have copies of our proposed specific recommendations here for your reference. Thank you.
Thank you. That'll be helpful if you can submit those. Our next three speakers, Thomas Jelinek, Sarah Whitfing from BizFed, and Christian Young. Please come forward.
Good afternoon, council members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Thomas Jelinek with the Pacific Merchant Shipping Association. We at PMSA appreciate the work of Los Angeles and Long Beach Port Commission and staff on the development of the Clean Air Action Plan. They have listened to and in some cases addressed the concerns of the PMSA about the Clean Air Action Plan. Progress has been made in some key areas, specifically if the port were to mandate a technology that has not yet been developed, tested, or made commercially available. Our concerns remain about the CAP's $14 billion cost and its potential negative impacts on the port's competitiveness and the 1 in 9 jobs in Southern California's region that are reliant on the ports. As the CAP is implemented, it will take open, honest, and collaborative dialogue by all parties to address the feasibility of zero-emission cargo handling equipment and to examine the port's ability to compete with other North American trade gateways. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon, Sarah.
Thank you. My name is Sarah Wiltfong, and I'm here on behalf of Los Angeles County Business Federation. We are an alliance of more than 165 business organizations that represent over 325,000 employers with 3 million employees throughout Los Angeles County. BizFed and our members have been actively involved in reviewing the final drafts of the Clean Air Action Plan. We support the CAP's goals of reducing emissions from ships, trucks, cargo handling equipment, locomotive, and harbor craft. And we applaud the partnership between the LA ports and the Port of Long Beach and the maritime industry, who together have made considerable progress over the past 10 years. And I also want to reiterate that during our outreach efforts, we've been very pleased with the city staff and the port commissioners who have taken their time to listen to our concerns and incorporate some of our key asks into the plan. With this in mind, we wanted to reiterate to the City Council the business community's hope for the CAP. Given the port's nearly stagnant growth over the past 10 years and the CAP's cost of over $14 billion, we believe it is imperative that the ports focus on a San Pedro Bay Port Competitiveness Action Plan, cost effectiveness, and to remain technology and fuel neutral. We look forward to working with the City Council and the ports to make sure that these goals are met, and we appreciate you listening to our comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Christian Young, followed by Wilson Trong, Tony Aguilar, and Liliana Guzman. Christian, welcome.
Hello. Thank you, council members. Hello. Yeah, my name is Christian. I'm just an activist and LA resident. Thanks for having me here today. I appreciate this opportunity to come before you to share my story and prove that we have been deprived of clean air for almost my entire life. I've driven nearly across the entire country before, and while doing so and admiring the natural beauty of the skylines that I encountered, I wondered about LA back home and all the beautiful and familiar sights I've seen just about my entire life. Imagine my dismay when descending from the mountains nearly the rest of the country resides on. All I can see is a thick, hazy cloud of exhaust, carbon dioxide, and other pollutants discoloring the skyline and blotting out the sun. I'm sure we're all familiar with that same sight. For the first time in my life, it made me conscious of how good other places have it, simply because their air isn't filled with pollution. I'm a born and raised Southlander here, and the air quality problem is greater than even our city. But as a beacon of hope and progress, not only for the nation, not even for the region, but for the nation and the world at large, it is high time for change in Los Angeles. Waiting for federal intervention and some type of regulation has come and gone. They just don't care. Here today, we need to begin using cleaner technology that is available now, technology that reduces air pollutants and is financially feasible. We don't need diesel continuing to destroy our quality of life and diminishing the chances for a greener future. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon, council members. My name is Wilson Chung. I'm a private citizen, and I'm going to be reading a letter from the Mayor Pro Tem of Rosemead regarding the motion of 245. Dear council members, we're excited to learn you are considering a 245 motion in City Council regarding the recent adoption of the cap by the port. We were disappointed in the final version of the cap as we feel it failed to immediately reduce air pollution from diesel port trucks. As we are sure you're aware of, our cities and neighborhoods are directly impacted by diesel port trucks traversing the 710 and other freeways. Our families and children are suffering from the worst air quality in the nation. The problem with the cap is that an entire generation of children will be born and raised before the zero emission goal is attained. In the meantime, diesel trucks will continue to haul freight through our cities. We have an urgent public health need to immediately reduce air pollution and a global imperative to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. We cannot afford to wait, therefore we would like to see you veto the cap as it currently stands. The cap can easily be strengthened without starting over what has been a long process. The CAP Clean Trucks program can be accelerated and strengthened to achieve immediate emission reductions. Clean Trucks program can be accelerated and strengthened to achieve immediate emissions and reductions. Start date, the Clean Trucks incentive fee doesn't have to start 2020 or later. We can do better. We should begin in 2018. Clean Trucks incentive, the CAP waits for the CARB to take rulemaking actions in the future. The CAP should not wait for CARB and instead should be beginning to use CARB's optional low NOx standard at 0.02 as a criteria for Clean Trucks incentives. For too long, our residents have paid the price of being socioeconomically disadvantaged. Clean truck technologies are entering the market, and California's legislature has allocated unprecedented funding to incentive clean trucks. Now it's time to adopt a stronger cap and begin paving the way to a zero emissions future by immediately reducing emissions today. We are counting on you. The health of our community is counting in your hands. Thank you.
Thank you. Tony Aguilar, Liliana Guzman.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the board. As a private citizen of Los Angeles County, I'm concerned with the increase in port traffic worsening our air in Southern California. The cap can easily be strengthened without starting over what has already been a long process. The CAP Clean Trucks program can be accelerated and strengthened to achieve immediate emission reductions by beginning the Clean Trucks incentive fee, which doesn't start until 2020. We can do better. We should begin in 2018. The CAP also waits for CARB to take rulemaking action in the future. The CAP should not wait for the CARB and instead should begin now using CARB's optional low NOx standard of 0.2 as a criteria for clean truck incentives. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Liliana Guzman, who will be followed by Eric Moran, Dan Olson, and Scott Evans. Liliana?
Hello, my name is Liana Guzman, and first of all, I'd like to thank you all for taking the time to discuss an issue that not only is important to most of us Angelenos, but it's also an issue that continues to impact our communities. But also, I'm tired of living such a poor quality of life. That's why I'm here today pleading for a stronger cap that will take action now. There's technology available that will lead to near zero emissions, so what are we waiting for? we need to start getting rid of diesel and use renewable natural gas. More and more of my community members are getting sick. I developed exercise-induced asthma because I would exercise outside. How crazy is that? As I drove here, I witnessed a miracle. I was able to see the San Gabriel Mountains. It is tremendously sad how air pollution hides our public lands. So that's why I'm here today and ask you as our leaders to help us resolve the environmental injustice that we're facing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Buenas tardes, council members. My name is Eric Moran. I just want to say kudos to you all for all the hard work and diligence in this CAP. Indeed, we have made progressive changes from a very long time ago. However, I want to share today my personal testimony. You see, I grew up in South LA my entire life. And just recently, I started substitute teaching elementary students, and I seen the condition of some of these students during recess times, where they can't even play outside because they have health problems, mostly asthma. And so I thought of myself, and I came to a realization: how come these kids can't play? Well, it's the congregation of trucks that throw out dirty diesel in these marginalized communities that they live in. And so for me, I stand here before so I could be a voice for these kids. They need health quality, and it starts first with the removal of diesel trucks. And so I ask you all to be that social model of change and implement new and a stronger CAP. And hopefully we could see these children be the future leaders of our nation as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Dan Olson, followed by Scott Evans.
Hello, Council. Thank you for having me. My name is Dan Olson, and I'm a Life Scout of America, as well as a graduate of the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point, which is one of the top leading institutions in the country on environmentalism and conservatism. We were the first university in Wisconsin to become completely energy efficient in the state of Wisconsin. So I just want to speak from my own personal experiences. I bike to work. I bike 20 miles there and back, reduce my carbon footprint. I take public transit as much as possible. I don't own a vehicle. We have the technology today to stop our reliance on diesel fuel. We know that 1 gallon of fuel burned is equivalent to 22 pounds of carbon dioxide. If someone's in your house poisoning your family with gas and your whole family, they say, oh, I turned it down by 80%. You don't want a 20% gas leak in your house hitting your family and your kids. I'm asking as a moral and ethical dilemma here, not just what's good for you, what's good for me, what's good for your neighbor, but what's good for Los Angeles and the world at large. If we do want to be a clean, energy-efficient leader in this country, we have to make bold moves. We need to end our reliance on diesel fuel. By 2018, we have the technology, so let's use it. Yes, it might not be easy. We don't always get to make the easy decisions. This sweatshirt that I'm wearing, I own 2 hoodies because I believe in sustainability. This was a $60 sweatshirt, but you know what? No pesticides, no slave labor, nothing. So I think you should really look at what's at stake here. It's our lungs, it's our quality of living. I go for a hike in Griffith Park, and you can just see the smog. And yes, we've come a long way, and we appreciate everything. But the answer to me is easy for our kids, for our grandkids, for the generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Scott Evans, followed by Christian Laffey, followed by Ricky Jimenez.
Good afternoon, council members, committee members. My name is S.M. Evans. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak with you about an important issue, and thank you for all the hard work that's been done on the CAP so far. But I'm in agreement with my community members that the CAP hasn't gone far enough in regards to diesel. As a longtime Angelino, healthcare advocate, and environmentalist, I feel that we can't delay moving away from diesel. We do have cleaner, affordable alternatives, such as renewable natural gas, and they should be implemented now. So I ask that you please pass a stronger CAP. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Kristen Laffey. I'm also pushing for a stronger CAP. We have the technology to not use diesel trucks. I mean, gasoline is actually 15% cleaner than diesel itself. So if we can't have completely electric cars and trucks, at least gasoline, and get diesel off the road. My grandparents worked in diesel, and now they work in windmills and natural energy. And it is harder, it does cost a lot of money, and I see all of those things, but we have the technology to get diesel off the road, so I think we should push for that in 2018, not wait till 2020 or 2023. I'm choking.
Thank you. Ricky Jimenez, followed by Jose Cacho, followed by Nuri Rodriguez.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Ricky Jimenez. Thank you for having me here today. Thank you for your time and
Speak
to
close to
discuss
the mic.
this issue. Yeah, sorry.
Much better. We're going to put it in. There you go. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for discussing this issue that has been not only affecting me, but my family and also like our community. Me and my family have lived in LA for decades, and my family, my mother and brothers have actually moved down to the ports over time. However, because of this, we see that now my youngest sister has asthma, and it's becoming a very big problem. This is why we need to move away from like diesel-friendly emissions and push towards our zero emissions. I know that we've done a lot of good work towards that, but we need to make it sooner. Kids that are now in being born in younger ages are very prone to these effects. So this is why I urge you guys to push for the deadline to be sooner, not 2035. Thank you a lot for your time, and thank you for your leadership.
Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon, council members.
Good
My name is
afternoon.
Jose. I'm just here as a private citizen, here for the better cap for 2020 or before that. As a long resident of Los Angeles, I've seen the improvement of air quality and continued, but I also seen people with asthma and stuff, so it's also been really bad. We also need to, we have the technology for better equipment, so instead of relying on diesel that's been hurting our economy and our ecosystem. So I hope that we could get it through fast and a better cap. The cap was good, but it could do a little bit more improvement. And thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you. Yuri Rodriguez, followed by Antonio Vasquez, who would be followed by Catherine Q and Danielle Marquez. Neri?
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon,
Afternoon.
council members. My name is Neri Rodriguez. Thanks for having me here today. I am also here to ask for a stronger cap. I know we've been repeating the same thing over and over, but I still think that it's not loud enough and there are not enough voices vouching for it. So I'm here to tell you my personal story. I'm a Cuban American. My mother and father came from Cuba to LA in 1987 before my family decided to relocate to Miami, Florida. The city was already infamous for its poor air quality. I want to thank you so much for the work that's already been done. I've lived in the Midwest, I've lived in Miami, and there's nothing compared to what California is doing. And clearly here in LA, we are the forerunners. But I just need to reiterate that we don't have 10 years to wait. Basically, we're here today, 30 years later, 87, now it's 17. It's still a huge issue. And as you heard from the other constituents, they are having health problems. And it's only going to get worse. Honestly, I feel that we are 30 years behind. I feel that we need to get diesel off of the road yesterday. If you allow this to pass as is, including the continued use of diesel, you are exposing your community to 10 more years of health issues. And I just implore you to strengthen and amend cap or risk the consequences. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for your testimony. Is it Antonio Vasquez? Or and then Catherine Q.
Good afternoon, City Councilmen. My name is Antonio. I'm here just to talk about my issue that, I grew up in Northern California, and living over there, I used to always exercise 2 hours a day and everything. Living here now 6 years after, I have reduced it to 45 hours, 45 minutes a day, just because I'm afraid of being asthmatic. The pollution is really bad right here. I go out, and Northern California, you go out and you see the difference in the air and everything. So that's why I'm just urging that we really do push it into having a better, I'm sorry.
Okay.
To having a lot of better, cleaner air, It's just, we need better technology to be using. But I really want to thank you for your time, and I urge you for a stronger cap. Thank you.
Thank you. Catherine Q, followed by Danielle Marquez and Jay Restivo.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Catherine. I'm a community member. And like other people mentioned, we do have the technology to better this situation. And my personal experience, I also have a sister that has asthma, and really I don't want it to get worse. And she's been doing, okay, but I just really wouldn't want to see her health decreasing due to this problem. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Danielle Marquez, born and raised in LA. Thank you for having me here today. Thank you for all of the progress that has been made, and thank you for having this, for discussing this important issue. As a health and wellness advocate and a mother of 4, I am deeply concerned with the air quality and our dependence on diesel. We need a plan that starts in 2018 and starts to clean our air and get us off of diesel sooner rather than later. The health of my children and the health of all Angelinos are depending on it. Thank you for your leadership.
Thank you. Jay Restivo, followed by Sylvia Santos, and our last speaker, Mark Carell.
Good afternoon,
Good afternoon.
gentlemen and ladies. I'm a private citizen, and I'm not a native Angelino, but I like my adopted city. And I'm impressed with CAP, and I think actually it could go further sooner. So what I am suggesting, this is a suggestion, is to perhaps rework the CAP so that we get diesel off of our air or out of our air sooner. I have relatives here, cousins here. I have a great circle of friends. I vote. I work for the I don't work for them. I volunteer for the ACLU, and I feel very privileged to be able to have the opportunity to speak with you this afternoon. And gentlemen, thank you for your report from the ports. And I know you've been working hard, and I think we can just do it a little sooner. So I appreciate the time to speak to you. I'm actually a native New Yorker. Don't hold that against me. And have a wonderful holiday time, and please consider not passing this current edition of CAP. We can do better. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Sylvia Santos, and then Mark Carell.
Hello, council members and everyone else. Thank you for allowing us to share our thoughts about this issue. I'm here to speak on, I'm an Angelino, and I'm very proud to be, and I really appreciate all of the hard work you put day in, day out. Over the past, I would say 15 years, I worked as a community advocate. I also worked for former Assembly Member Stephen Bradford. So within those capacities, I was able to witness firsthand many of the challenges the constituents face, especially in the South Bay cities, the ports, and all of that, and throughout LA County. And definitely I've seen many of the challenges people face, not only as far as, being unemployed, and I see how important it is, Mr. Cannon shared, job creation. I really value that and applaud those that are creating jobs every day. But I also seen how people have struggled health-wise, as far as not being able to afford health care, tying it in, obviously, to the high rates of pollution that we see. And I am here urging you to just reconsider, those sections, to make a stronger CAP as well. Because it is important that we invest, of course, in business, but it is also important that we invest in the wellness of our communities. That we ensure, we have a social responsibility, of course, to business, but also to our communities. So, just I am just embracing a more collaborative effort, and making sure that we move forward more expediently, because as we know, many times, those programs that you were talking about, sir, they do take time. So in the meantime, I'm just, concerned as a parent, as an advocate, as far as, the healthy of our people in Los Angeles. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And our final speaker, Mark Carell? Did I pronounce that right? Sorrell? Carell? Carroll, sorry.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, council members, and staff. My name is Mark Carroll. I just started this week as the new president and CEO of Breathe LA. Breathe LA promotes clean air and healthy lungs through research, education, advocacy, and technology in Southern California since 1903. We promote clean air initiatives and provide environmental and health education and empowerment programming for young youth and adults. Breathe LA supports the goals of the Clean Air Action Plan, but takes issue with the timelines. As we know, the solution is cleaner technologies. Just a few years ago, we would say the solution was far off, but now the technologies exist, particularly with regard to heavy-duty vehicles. Tesla, Toyota, Daimler, BYD, and Cummins Westport have introduced either electric or ultra-low NOx natural gas trucks, and more manufacturers are expected to join them. So the issue is not whether clean trucks exist, the issue is getting these trucks deployed. The port's previous Clean Air Action Plans have been successful at reducing emissions from port vehicles, and this version could achieve additional results, but we should not have to wait any longer. I'm here today asking on behalf of the community stifled by air pollution across Los Angeles. Their lives and health have been impacted enough by the failure to adopt readily available cleaner technologies. In Los Angeles, approximately 1 in 11 children, or 9%, have asthma. For children with asthma, the ER visit rate is 88.5 in every 10,000, and 52% of children with asthma have reported missing school due to the exacerbation of symptoms, resulting in 1.2 million absences and missed learning opportunities. In addition, African American children have over 3 times the rate of asthma as compared to other groups. We can't continue to wait. On behalf of Breathe LA, I urge you to support the goals of the Clean Air Action Plan, but to move up the implementation timelines and work to achieve emission reductions now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you to each and every one of you who attended and gave heartfelt testimony, colleagues. It's great to have this type of public comment period where we're so used to almost on a daily basis to hear some of these knuckleheads that come through committee and council for the record. But I really appreciate all your presence, and I know this is an important issue facing our entire region, not just the surrounding port communities. And with that, just to kind of piggyback on Mark's comments on, the reason why I wanted to exert some authority over this guiding principle of what we call the Clean Air Action Plan and this policy that was approved by both commissions. I felt that the question I asked myself, why are we waiting so long to implement cleaner technology? I mean, the port communities, this region is choking on diesel emissions, and putting on not only my resident hat, council hat, but also AQMD hat. My number one question is, why can't the plan be implemented sooner in 2018? I'd like to call on Mr. Cannon to come forward, or Gene, if you guys want to. We question why both ports are suggesting the start of the tariff in 2020. Is the port open to looking at incentives to put near zero emission technology in place sooner than that?
Yeah, let me give you a little background. We've invested probably $15 to $20 million in zero emission equipment, and we've gone to these startups, and they've all failed over the last 7 or 8 years. What we're looking at now is there's 2 or 3. We're neutral on technology. Whoever can come forward and prove to us that you got zero emission, we're on it. We just came back from Shanghai, talking to them about clean air, and then we met with Toyota in Japan about their, their fuel cell, hydrogen fuel cell. Tesla, we met with them. All of them are telling us it's 1 year, 2 years, 3 years off. Until you get to the big companies that got the big money, we're never going to succeed. We've tried it a different way. We went to the startups, and they failed. So when the technology is available, and you get these bigger companies that said they can provide zero emissions, we're ready. They're not. So when you ask us to move in a more rapid way, and I wish we could, but we're not the ones creating this technology. We're the ones that are going to pay for it, along with you guys and the state. The difference between the early Clean Air program that was started 8 or 10 years ago, got a lot of federal money, and we had a president that supported it. We got a president now that doesn't believe in climate change that's going on. And you think he's going to support this program? I don't think so. So when people come to us and say, make it quicker, make it faster, we wish we could. Where's the money? Where's the technology? You tell me the technology is available today, that's not true. It may be theoretically, it's not market valued yet, it's not available. Now when we talk about cleaner energy, not zero emission, there's fuels now that can help us, but that's not the long-term solution. What the environmentalists are asking for is zero emission, not something in between. It's not available.
So on the question of and let me be clear, we need to march toward a zero emission port, without a doubt. And I don't think anyone's arguing that point. The best available technology is also important to implement those technologies. And I do know we have Sarah Reese here on, this program is estimated between $14 and $38 billion to implement, depending on who you ask. At the same time, in talking to our longshore friends and PMSA, how does the port plan to remain competitive moving forward in light of the increased competition from the East Coast ports, the widening of the Panama Canal, knowing that we have to implement this plan that's going to take us into the future?
Well, I just believe that when I voted as a commissioner, I tried to look at the balance of what was possible and not selling, as I call it, wolf tickets. You can't go out and promise people something you can't deliver on. And I think what we agreed upon is what we can deliver on. Anything beyond that, like I say, you're selling them wolf tickets. You're not telling them the truth about what is possible. And I think that's where we stand today. I wish we could accelerate the process. But until there's a technology by these bigger companies, whether it's Toyota, whether it's Volvo, whether it's Tesla, and until they tell us they're ready and you can make it at a market rate, one of the things that Gene explained to you guys is we're trying to create a market maker. And what that means is up and down the West Coast, there's a discussion going on with all the different terminals and the ports about how many clean air trucks they need and how can we create a market for it. Until you have the technology and the market and somebody to pay for it, it's not going to happen, and we're moving down that path. So, I wish I could sit here and say that we could do this today or next year. That would be disingenuous. And that's all we can say, and if you guys got a better plan, show us.
So with that, if I can call up Sarah Reese, I do have a specific AQMD question, and as Dr. Liu indicated, is Sarah still here? She take off? Oh, sorry. Dr. Liu indicated that the AQMD governing board just last Friday approved a $107 million grant from the cap and trade to be implemented through the Cara Moyer program for truck replacement. So to respond to the commissioner's statement that, green technology, zero emission technology still doesn't exist today. We respect that. But what can we use today as part of this $107 million grant? In what space can we utilize those dollars for near zero emission trucks, renewable gas trucks? Can we use these dollars tomorrow?
We do have a number of funding resources available. I'm going to defer to my colleague, as I've just very recently started with the district, and he's far more knowledgeable.
Zorik Pirvesi, I'm Planning and Rules Manager with the Southwest AQMD. We believe that the near zero technology, as was mentioned, will become available early next year. And that basically would be an interim strategy before the zero emission trucks kick in. So we do agree that that could be an interim strategy. We request that the port maybe consider establishing some targets that we know a certain number of these trucks would come in by 2023, which is our attainment deadline for
Right.
meeting the ozone air quality standard.
So I'm stumped. You're saying that there's going to be some near zero technology available after the start of the year. We have dollars in place. So let me call up the port. If I can have someone from the port come. So why are we then not limiting, or, I mean, I know it's port is indicating the cap is technology neutral, but if you can then, Gene, address the fact that there are dollars in place to use cleaner fuel vehicle trucks through the car and oil program with the truck replacement.
I'll provide you with the facts.
Please.
There is one company today who is testing one type of engine, a 12-liter LNG or liquid natural gas product that has yet to go into mass production, nor has it been certified as ready to go on the over-the-road transit paths that we have with our port, nor have there been any contractual arrangements made with the major truck manufacturers in the United States. So to say that a particular technology will be ready next year has not been proven yet. And as a longtime industry member, I would never advocate that we sole source on one particular type of product, which is why I have maintained that we should be technology and energy neutral to spur competition and use those available funds as they become ready very quickly, we trust, to put in motion those demonstration projects and pilot projects that will test the durability and the duty cycle of these vehicles. We have 16,000 trucks in Southern California that have the permission rights on a daily basis to call at our port. They typically run for at least 13 years or 800,000 miles, the useful life of a truck by the driver here in this marketplace. To turn over that vehicle market would represent less than 2 weeks worth of the annual production capacity of the manufacturers of heavy-duty trucks in the United States. That is a very small percentage for this market that would require a retooling of manufacturing plants that basically cost about $2 million per hour to manufacture trucks. We have brought in the major truck manufacturers, those that were mentioned here earlier, those who we're very familiar with, Peterbilt, Freightliner, Kenworth, etc. BYD, Tesla also joined the same roundtable meeting that I called for with Mayor Garcetti's appointed Sustainable Freight Advisory Committee some months ago. We wanted to make sure that those manufacturers and the tiered suppliers, as well as the buyers of those equipment, would tell us what the real landscape is. As Commissioner Arian said, we want to do this yesterday. But to say technology is available because we have seen commercials on TV or we have seen lighter duty and passenger vehicles on the road doesn't mean it necessarily translates today into the capabilities needed to haul a 90,000-pound vehicle through its normal path of delivery and pickup. The other piece to this is very important, and I stated in my opening comments that were written that we need to be a market maker, because if we represent less than 3 or 4% of the total annual manufacturing capacity, we're going to need to band together with other people. And that is one initiative that Mayor Garcetti has put on our table for responsibility, to see if we can garner the support of the other West Coast ports to build up a bigger customer base, which would give confidence to the OEMs and the tiered suppliers that they can, through well-capitalized mechanisms, build these machines that will be at a decent cost and have, more importantly, I think, the durability to enter into this marketplace, where between the ports of Long Beach and Los Angeles, we represent 43% of our nation's imports. So the numbers are staggering, Mr. Chair. And as we look around, how do we turn things over as quickly as we want? How can technology and the advent of technology move at the speed that we all want it to? Very difficult proposition. But as we outline the cap, my sole focus and goal is to continue to work with these well-capitalized firms to show them what this market could be and get them interested in producing.
So say if Peterbilt comes out with a market-proven low-emission truck Q1 of 2018. This cap will not prevent it from launching.
Absolutely
into
not.
The market.
The cap is as I stated also in my written comments, the cap is a policy framework to allow for all of us to be on the same page as to what we're focusing. Ships, rail, trucks, supply chain efficiencies, the openness and the forward-leaning commentary we've given you to embrace technology and, more importantly, embrace those partnerships that we can create. If, for example, technology outpaces even my 30 years of industry expertise, I'll be the first guy on that plane to welcome that company to join us here in Los Angeles.
And as far biggest challenges that you foresee in this cap moving forward? Technology in general.
Yeah. And I've been extremely heartened. We spend, as you know from our dialogue, Chair, we spend a lot of time in Washington trying to garner support for policy and legislation. The same in Sacramento and here in Los Angeles County and the city of Los Angeles. I have been extremely heartened as a 30-year man in this industry as to how all parties have rallied around the understanding that it will take big dollars, it will take big mindset changes, and the ability for technology where no other state in the union is pursuing avenues like we are to say that we're really going to roll our sleeves up and get together with partners that we never dreamed of in the past. And today they will all sit around that table with a meaningful voice. And that means labor, the business community, our communities, environmental justice, and those well-capitalized manufacturers. That's not to say that if someone comes up with a great idea in their garage and they can find a way to make it to mass manufacturing, we'll also embrace them.
And I know Chris Cannon mentioned the issues of the truck issues, and as the last cap indicated, some challenges with our truck drivers. This committee held a special meeting at the port last Tuesday where we heard from a dozen of truck drivers that have been forced to work long hours and little pay as a result of this last clean truck program. So what steps are the port making to ensure truck drivers will not be exploited in
Well, I think it's
manner?
important, Mr. Chair, to talk about the entire backdrop. And I don't think truckers were put in a very bad position solely because of the Clean Truck Program. Dating back to the early 80s, federal law was changed to deregulate trucking and create an independent contractor model throughout the nation. Today, the average age of a trucker nationwide is 57 years old, and the depletion rate or turnover is more than 20%. This is no longer a profession in our nation. My grandfather was a trucker and a Teamster member with the American Can Company for some 40 years. My mother was a union organizer with American Airlines in the early 60s, where if you became engaged and got married, you no longer had a job. I understand this part of our business extremely well and maybe better than many others.
16,000 trucks today coming in and out of our port complex, both Long Beach and Los Angeles.
That's correct.
Technology, how do we, moving forward, again, transition those trucks to a cleaner fuel, zero emission?
This is probably the most delicate balancing act I have seen in my career. And how we move forward is a combination of all these many stakeholder groups that you and I deal with in the harbor community on a daily basis, times a million. And that is bringing those other disparate views into our view and our focal point. How do we get technology when we're just a very small market to these manufacturers to really come along with us? How do we make sure that we have the mechanisms? We don't procure any of this. We are working at the confluence of all these events in the supply chain, from the order cycle process to the manufacturer, those retailers, agricultural and mass manufacturing companies, the small family businesses. We have more than 241,000 customers that traverse our port on a daily basis. The cargo and passengers that move through our port touch each and every one of our 435 congressional districts. How do you get these trucks to turn over? It's the advent of proven technology, starting with exactly what we do here. It's the demonstration projects and the pilot programs to prove that if it can work in LA, it can work anywhere. And that's where it gives people the confidence, such as Mack Truck and Volvo, Daimler and Freightliner, who is the largest truck manufacturer worldwide. As we were in Germany last week, many of these comments I'm sharing with you come directly from the OEMs. And my job is very simple for the three of you gentlemen. My duty is to give you the facts so you can make informed decisions. I am not here for popularity. I want to run this nation's great port to the best of my ability, but also I want to be forward-leaning when it comes to our environmental stewardship requirements. And I can't do that, as Commissioner Arian said, by over-promising and under-delivering to our community.
So to respond to those speakers who came forward on getting cleaner fuel vehicle trucks quicker, so the .02 engines, they're not in market today, you're
That's
saying?
correct.
And this is why it's not in the plan to use the .02 engines within the first few years of the plan.
Policy embraces any technology that can be cleaner tomorrow than we have today. And although I say hope is not a strategy, I am positive in the direction that this one company, Cummins Westport, who is trying to manufacture one engine, the 12-liter LNG, testing in the marketplace today, who claims they can manufacture 700 per year, yet without any contracts with the major truck manufacturers, can come out into our marketplace very soon. But again, it's all about the permutations, how quickly the technology comes, and then how quickly we can fulfill the replenishment of those on-the-road trucks that exist today and won't be needed for tomorrow.
Thanks, Gene. And then if I can bring in Dr. Joe Liu, and then I'll turn it over to my colleagues. On the technology piece, my colleague on the AQMD governing board, who's no stranger to doing everything he can to reduce emissions and improve our air quality with Coalition Clean Air. Tell me, you heard the staggering numbers of the 16,000 trucks coming in and out of our port complex, both in Long Beach and Los Angeles.
12,000 regular users, but yes.
12,000 regular
16,000
users.
registered. Let me
The issue,
to take it back a little bit.
The technology is obviously the number one challenge here, and exists. It doesn't exist. I know. As far as
I
a
don't
.02
disagree
engine.
with what you heard from your executive director Siroka from the ports. What I think needs to be explained is how this process has been moving forward. A little bit of the context. So these 12-liter natural gas engines that are both either CNG or LNG have been working throughout the nation. UPS buys something like $100 million worth of them every year. What they did is they went back with funding from AQMD, among others, and they took a look at that engine and said, how can we clean it up? And it was, I don't know if we got ripped off or not, but it was pretty easy for them to do. So they simply took the crankcase and sent those emissions back through the system, and then they made the catalyst bigger. And voila, they're down to 0.02, 90% cleaner than the 2010 truck standard of every truck on the road. 90% cleaner. So this is why there's so much hope that this truck is going to do miraculous things. UPS has been testing these 12-liter trucks, the 0.02, for the last year. We've had one down at TTSI operating at the ports since June, July, somewhere around there. And it's done fantastic as far as I've heard. So it's not as if they don't completely exist. They've been going through the process of proving them out. What I hear from the company is that the California Air Resources Board is just days away from actually certifying this engine. And once that happens, they can go into manufacture.
Again, this cap is not going to prevent these types of engines
No, it shouldn't prevent it from happening. I think what a lot of people feel is if it would kind of get out in front of this and say, we fully expect this to happen, while having that proviso, which it does have on what you end up with, 5-year or 3-year reviews. 2 or 3-year reviews to make sure that things are still feasible. Right. It does look like, if everything goes perfectly, Cummins Westport, it says, is committing to manufacturing these engines full scale in February, and they'll start shipping them out. At the meeting that the port hosted with all of the original equipment manufacturers from the trucks, it was absolutely amazing. They all either showed up or they were on the phone, and every one of them said, we will put these engines into our trucks immediately and have them, and this is where we get the June date, in April, May, June, into trucks ready to be purchased. They were very enthusiastic about that opportunity of using these engines, since they already offer 12-liter engines and they think they can put them right in and get them on the road. It wouldn't be a single truck manufacturer, it would be a single engine. It would be better if we had more and more competition. Certainly, I went to the Tesla reveal of their heavy-duty truck, and it was well played by the company. We still need to know a lot more about it, and they're still not promising any manufacturing until 2019. You know, if that gets delayed, we'll have to see. There is a zero-emission pathway with a few companies. BYD is one. Tesla has jumped right in. Others are very interested. I think we have to invest in that. We have to invest this near-term money that we have in these trucks that are getting very clean very quickly. And what we're trying to work with the ports, and we've made a lot of progress, is building consensus on how quickly that'll move forward.
Thank you. Okay.
About 8 or 10 years ago, natural gas trucks were brought into the port. It failed. The drivers, the longshoremen, the trucking industry, they rejected it. There's no question that the technology has advanced. But until I buy into something, you're going to have to prove it. Not one truck, 50 trucks, 100 trucks in the duty cycle, then I'll buy it. And I'll promote it. That hasn't happened yet. So before we start picking the winner, prove it.
Okay, with that, colleagues, any questions, comments? Mr. Krikorian?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for really a lot of input. This has been a very fact-laden, intensive discussion. I appreciate that. I want to get a few things clearer in my mind, both on the process of the cap and on the technology and goal and specific environmental goals. First, this is not, and maybe Gene, if I could direct these questions to you, if you could come on up. So, obviously this is not the first Clean Air Action Plan the port has had. We've had Clean Air Action Plans in the past, and there have been a variety of revisions to them over the years. Is that right?
Yes, this will be the third revision to the Clean Air Action Plan and the second revision to the Clean Truck Program.
Okay, so like the others, this one is subject to further revision, updating as we move forward. If technologies change, nothing is stopping the port from revising its Clean Air Action Plan, moving its goals forward, specifying technologies if appropriate. You could do all that in a future revision of the Clean Air Action Plan when those issues became ripe, could you not?
That is true.
Okay. So, and then I have a specific question on the progress so far, because I appreciate many of the members of the public acknowledged, and Mr. Buscaino acknowledged his brother's experience. It can't be overstated the degree of progress that we've made in Southern California, but specifically that the port has made in improving air quality. But the one question I had when we had the presentation is there's been either we've met or exceeded or are nearly meeting our pre-existing goal, our pre-existing 2023 goals in every category except greenhouse gas emissions, which was not specified in this. And so what were the 2023 greenhouse gas emission goals, and where do we stand in meeting that goal?
Those will primarily follow the city's sustainability plan, the nation's attainment requirements, and as we move forward, working off of 1990 goals to reduce by, I think it's written in that slide, if I'm not mistaken, Chris, correct? Where we, bless you.
It was the one that was missing in the slide, that's why I asked.
Is the greenhouse gas not in there? We have.
Right. Okay.
Right, and that's to follow the city's sustainability plan.
So in the previous cap, I gather, the greenhouse gas goals were not specifically laid out because they didn't relate to local public health and other.
And at that time, my understanding prior to my joining the city, but we just didn't have the understanding of the technology to go after those reductions. And now we've learned a lot, still much more to do, but you'll see it more closely categorized.
Great. So that then brings me to, I guess I just want to bring this into the discussion because there's a little bit of a disconnect in what some of the public comments were about what our goals should be, and what I heard from the board and even from AQMD. So when we talk about zero emissions can mean many things to many people. You can mean zero tailpipe emissions, or you can mean zero greenhouse gas footprint. You can mean many things, and different technologies produce different results, which are relevant in different ways to different environmental goals. So if the goal of the community around the port is to reduce particulate matter, NOx and SOx, then clearly you want to have an all-electric fleet, because an all-electric fleet produces none of those things locally, and it exports its carbon footprint to Nevada and Colorado and other places where we're currently burning coal to provide electricity to Los Angeles. So our kids won't get asthma and won't get lung cancer from electric vehicles, but kids in those states will for the foreseeable future, at least until 2025. So, and I don't want to get on a soapbox about this, but I do think it's important that we understand what it is that we're trying to achieve by these different goals. So when we say near zero emissions, that is not zero emissions, and it does have a public health impact, albeit a very much diminished one certainly from diesel. And this discussion is relevant to the timeline because as a result of efforts that Mr. Bonin and I have led with the DWP is on track to achieving a 100% sustainable energy load. But we're far from that now. We burn almost 30% of the kilowatts that come out of the wall it's from burning coal. It's more than we are producing from all renewable sources combined. So we're far from there, and electric vehicles, as of right now, are not producing those sorts of benefits globally. So I give that as a foundation to trying to understand this timeline. Both you and Commissioner Arian mentioned the challenges of trying to get effective technology right now or even within the next few years. We haven't really had any analysis that's been presented to us, at least, about what the economic impact of those goals would be on truckers, on the truck owners, on surrounding businesses or whatever. I mean, these trucks a new truck costs, what, $250,000 or something to...
Well, maybe double that.
Yeah, okay. So you're making a substantial investment buying one truck with a life expectancy of maybe a decade and a half or so. So the decision that people make right now about whether to go with a natural gas technology or an electric technology is going to affect us for a decade and a half. It's going to be an enormous financial investment by people. There is fueling infrastructure and other investments that have to be made at the port, by the port, to accommodate these things. So expediting this goal has enormous implications for a lot of different stakeholders, real-life implications, and that may or may not produce the environmental result that we're hoping to achieve. Is that a
I think you
fair
put
summary?
it very well. There's a lot we don't know. What we did know and gain consensus around was that the goals that were promised to our community many years back were achieved or nearly achieved 9 years ahead of schedule. And we took it upon ourselves to say, hey, let's re-up our investment in this program and see what we can do better. But that's why it's a policy. And it's a policy to build a framework around how those discussions can move forward and specific implementation strategies can go to market. I don't know what the real definition history will tell us will be of zero emissions, zero tailpipe, pure zero, renewable, et cetera, and the varying groups that want to have a voice at that table. I don't know the answers to that. What I do know is that we have a forward-leaning and Los Angeles mentality about how we're going to do better tomorrow than we are today.
Now, this plan was agreed jointly by both the City of Long Beach and the City of Los Angeles and their respective mayors.
That's correct.
This was the product of, I assume, some degree of public outreach over the course of the last 2 years that you've been
More than 70 public meetings, dozens upon dozens of sidebars and other types of gatherings with over 30 stakeholder groups and the complement of more than 400 written commentary letters that came to us.
Okay.
Yes, it consumed us for probably 2.5 years in trying to be everywhere we possibly could to hear the voice of our stakeholder communities.
And I assume that organizations like the Sierra Club, the Natural Resources Defense Council, and other national environmental organizations were involved in those discussions?
Just to name a few, yes. And I would say that we did a great job in that the business community, environmental justice, mainstream, and regulators are all equally as mad at us. Because we either went too far or didn't go far enough. But I think what that showed us in all sincerity is that we're really striking a chord on how we can move this, raise this bar and move this further than we have before. But the outreach was, I think, again, as a long-time participant in port activities outside of my life overseas in the private sector, this outreach was done really, really well in trying to be a welcoming community for all input.
And you said that, you made that comment with levity, but I guarantee if there was any group that was 100% satisfied with every single thing you did in this plan, I would question whether you had done your job
That's right,
thoroughly.
and that's the point of emphasis, yes.
Yeah. And I note that those very environmental organizations, maybe grudgingly, but have not appeared here today to, question the resulting work. I'm sure no one's happy, entirely, because everybody would like us to move forward.
Sure,
but
sure.
Okay. So now let's shift. Oh, so if we were to make changes in this, what impact would that have on the agreement between Long Beach and Los Angeles? What would be the process that we would have to do to make changes in this plan right now, and how would that differ from maybe something that the port might do unilaterally to improve upon this plan subsequent to its enactment?
Well, I would dissuade you with all of my will not to do that. I have our city attorney from the Harbor Department here with us, Janice Sidley, but to send this back down and recapitulate something that we've been working on for 2.5 years, which is simply a policy framework to move forward and set us backwards for more time that results in not only not taking advantage of what we can do today, but prolonging that activity, I think would be a disservice to what has been accomplished so far. The mechanisms would be beyond my reach. Jana, if you'd like to comment on them now, but that would make me scared witless.
Thank you all. I just would say and that this is before you today under 245, and under 245 with respect to the Port of Los Angeles, it's a straight up or down vote for you. So amending it is not possible at this point. Thank you.
Okay.
Further to that, from a commercial and political spectrum, the mayors of Long Beach and Los Angeles have put in writing and resolution in the summertime that this is the direction they have given their harbor departments. We have voted as a joint board, which happens once every 5 to 10 years, to go back and state to the Port of Long Beach and that great city that we're changing our minds at this juncture, I think would be a heavy lift for me and the other members of the Harbor Department.
Okay, so separate from that then, if we were to decide, let's say over the next couple of months, new technology is approved, we're ready to address some of Commissioner Arian's concerns, and now there's a technology in place that maybe we can utilize right away. Maybe it will be reliable. The state's certifying it. It's being manufactured by Peterbilt or something. So if that were to happen, even without going to Long Beach, even without changing the plan, the port could unilaterally implement the same goals, mandate a technology if it wished, move up the deadlines. You could do all those within the construct of the cap without changing it, couldn't you?
I sure could, and if it put us at a competitive disadvantage, simply the trucks would make a right-hand turn and all go to Long Beach.
They probably would,
Right.
but I would say that we could throw down the gauntlet a little bit between our mayor and the mayor of Long Beach to have them come and join us as well. But my point is, the cap is not a barrier to our doing so.
That is correct.
Politics might be, economics might be, but the cap itself is.
That is correct, and I think that's been stated several times here through questioning. You're exactly right.
Okay. Now I'm concerned about this cap and trade money that we heard about, some of which is specifically earmarked for clean port trucks. I heard that we have a deadline of June of 2019 for encumbering the grant funds, the 100 and some million that have already been set aside specifically. Can you speak to that a little bit? Because I never like to leave money on the table, and if there's money there to be able to be earmarked in connection with this, what are our options for doing so, and in what way is that impacted by the cap?
Yeah, and I'm of the same thinking as you are, that if there's money available, we want to spend it to advance the technology. We have a technology advancement program in the city and the port complex that we've used, but more importantly, in order to get real movement on this, I need 100, 200 trucks that I could do a demonstration project with. I have yet to find a company who can give me 200 trucks that are battery electric, zero emissions, complete, tailpipe or within the supply chain. I have yet to be able to find that company. I am pushing companies such as the aforementioned Toyota after our meeting in Nagoya on the hydrogen fuel cell to potentially give us 20 trucks for demonstration projects. At the Everport terminal as well as at the West Basin Container Terminal, we're testing handfuls of trucks and yard equipment today. To get the scale we need to be statistically significant takes a large number of trucks. We are willing, we are open for business. We need companies that can supply those. And with that, I can spend those funds.
So, well, you mentioned the electrics. Even with traditional LNG vehicles, forget renewable natural gas, just traditional natural gas vehicles, which we're using all the time in our fleet throughout the city, even including heavy vehicles, you wouldn't be able to utilize these funds in order to incentivize those sorts of vehicles?
Yeah, the answer is yes to incent those vehicles. Today, a handful of those are being tested, furnished by manufacturer Cummins Westport out of Indiana, a handful. They're being tested by TTSI and some other truckers here. This is the 12-liter LNG engine that can haul 80 to 90,000 pounds of cargo, tear weight, and vehicle. These are not similar to what we traditionally as citizens see moving around our city. And then again, to get that scale up and get them commercially available through a mass manufacturing process is what we're driving every day. But this is where we have spent a lot of time, and our David Libatique from the Harbor Department, along with Mark Mendoza, who is the president of ILW Local 13, campaigned under the direction of our organizations in Sacramento, and with the strong leadership of the assembly member to get these funds pushed out. And there's a little bit of a chicken and an egg here too, I'll be quite honest with you. There are some who believe that if we put up money, if we put up requirements, that these big companies, they'll come along. There are others, and that may be the 1970s automobile model. There are others who believe that we've got to work in partnership and continue to develop with these monies and give the understanding that we will be a market maker. So it's a very delicate balance that we're walking. But I tell you, this is exactly what I told our mayor, that with the direction we have, my number one job is to secure the support of these manufacturing companies and their tiered suppliers. Because simply putting down a mandate or throwing a ton of money at something, neither will give you the end result just by sitting and watching. We have got to be a true partner in this reliable development of technology.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks to the port for the presentation. I don't have a lot to say or many questions to ask. Let me just start with a couple observations. One, Mr. Krikorian noted this as well. The change over the past generation has been dramatic, and I think the port deserves a lot of kudos for that. And the generations of people from this mayor and previous mayors who've worked on it. We really are doing something groundbreaking. There always is going to be an energy and a dynamic to do even better, and that's a good thing, and we should welcome that. It pushes us to even be more groundbreaking. I got to say, in listening to this conversation here today and listening to this discussion, I actually have not really heard, despite the way some of the stuff has been framed, I have not really heard any disagreement. What I have heard essentially everybody in this room say is we need to get to zero as soon as possible. I heard some of the public testimony focus on the get to zero with more emphasis in that sentence. And I heard the port say the same sentence, but just more emphasis on as soon as possible, the emphasis on possible and being sensitive to that. I really do not hear people saying different things. What I've heard Mr. Buscaino say, what I've heard folks in the environmental community say, what I've heard folks here say is we want you to do more than is specifically called out in the cap and do it faster. And what I've heard the port say in return is, well, yeah, of course, that's what we plan on doing. So I really do hear folks essentially saying the same thing. So let me ask two questions. One is I'm not an expert on air quality. I'm not an AQMD guy. I'm not an expert on NOx and SOx, and I'm not an expert on port operations, port not being in my district. One of the things that Mr. Krikorian talked about was not wanting to make a long-term, expensive investment in a technology that may not work out or may get superseded by an even better technology in 18 months. Do we have the potential to lease some of the stuff as opposed to purchase some of the equipment that would give us more flexibility to back out of something that isn't working out or switch over to an improved technology when it emerges?
The answer is yes. We've had different business models that we evaluate, intermediaries that can come in and work with us on those types of concepts. But please remember that we do not procure any of this equipment. We are the landlord. But with those great networks and relationships that we have exhibited over time to bring those stakeholders together who are of influence and procurement capability, I think different business models that are being evaluated would be welcomed to de-risk, in some cases, what maybe leading-edge technology cannot promote over the long term, or vice versa, take advantage of the technology that would have great staying power if, in fact, it comes to us quicker than we imagine.
Okay. So, and that is something that we or you have the ability to incentivize with tenants?
Potentially so, yes. And we have other entities that are willing to be partners with us on that as well. Our most recent meetings with the chair of CARB, Mary Nichols, and the leader of the AQMD have led us to just that point as well. So using those monies that are available to help incent. There are other entities in the private sector that are also willing to incent these technologies coming on board as well. And that will be necessary to remain commercially competitive and make sure that other stakeholders in the supply chain are not adversely affected by some of our aspirations.
And that kind of stuff is absolutely consistent with the cap?
Yes.
Okay. So, speaking only for myself, but I speculate that there's not a willingness on this committee to deny this and send you back to the drawing board with Long Beach. I don't think that would be a particularly good idea. I think too many people of goodwill have put a lot of work into this and have done a tremendous job. However, from what I'm hearing here, there wouldn't be anything wrong with recommendations this committee made, or requests this committee made, or requests the chair made, that asked for some more specific aspirational goals for the port to report back on without having to amend the cap. Just be more specific implementation guidelines or requests from the council, and the port report back on those. It might behoove us all, instead of waiting for the annual report, given how fast technology is moving, to do so when there's milestones to report on maybe a quarterly basis or something like that, as a sort of a supplement to the annual. But all of that would be perfectly consistent, no problems legally or anything like that, right?
Yeah, I'd be happy to report back to you at times that you see fit.
Okay, all right.
Thank you, Mr. Bonin. Forgive me if I may have missed it, but I don't know, in Chris's presentation, there is an implementation task force per se on a group of folks at all levels that will ensure that the plan is implemented. Can you just focus on that for a minute?
Sure. Yeah, and that was part of what we did in our discovery with all the stakeholder groups, that to an individual almost, everyone wanted to be involved in the implementation program. So we will hold quarterly meetings. We'll have some specific people picked out that are subject matter experts or thought leaders in their particular areas, but everyone is welcome. And we expect to have great turnouts every quarter. We'll be submitting reports back to City Hall and to you guys if you feel that's appropriate. We'd be happy to share that information with you.
Well, then let us memorialize those requests.
Sure.
The will of this committee will, the action would be to concur with the Board of Harbor Commissioners' approval of the 2017 Cleaner Action Plan update, but request a number of report backs, which I will verbalize now. And colleagues, if you too have a report back or two, please be sure to make that known here in committee. So, like one request that the Harbor Department report back on strategies that will necessitate contracts, tariff amendments, leases, and licenses that will need City Council approval along with anticipated timeline. Two, request the Harbor Department to report with quarterly status reports from the CAP Implementation Advisory Group to the Trade, Travel, and Tourism Committee. Three, request the Harbor Department to work with Council District 15 and AQMD and report back on the implementation rollout of the AQMD and other grant-funded programs for truck conversion and or purchases. Four, request the Harbor Department to report on the feasibility and an issue that you had, Paul, report on the feasibility and market rate studies on the proposed gate fee. And lastly, request the Harbor Department to report on options for the implementation in 2018 or 2019 that achieves near zero emission truck standards. And that was in response to those folks who came here to speak on finding a way to get to the near zero emission trucks sooner. So we'd like to hear more on finding that quicker implementation by doing so, by requesting that report to this committee. Good? Okay.
Fully noted. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Siroka. Okay, so with that, that'll be the order. Again, thank you all for joining us, and I really appreciate the testimony, and to the staff, both ports, for their leadership and commitment, and also to the two mayors, Mayor Garcetti and Mayor Garcia, for leading this effort to do all we can to continue to move the port forward, but at the same time do so in an environment, in a green way that really respects the environment, not only for our region, for this entire state and country. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. Appreciate the time today, and thank you for the members of the public that came out. Thank you.
We are now adjourned. Thank you.